My name is Alina, and at 38, I often feel like I'm treading a narrow path between quiet routine and the dull ache of disappointment. I work at a beauty salon nestled in a sleepy corner of our suburban enclave, not a place of high glamour, but of gentle rhythms and familiar faces. I offer facials, massages, and waxing treatments, giving people small escapes and a bit of renewal. To me, it's meaningful work. But to my husband, it's always been beneath me. He's 15 years my senior, always guarded with his praise and stricter still with money. He thinks my job is too personal, too revealing. But I keep going. I must. And deep down, I want to. Our marriage feels more like a contract these days, cordial, distant, held together by routine rather than affection. We live like neighbors under the same roof, trading chores and exchanging the occasional sentence. The warmth we once shared has long since faded, like paint slowly worn down by sun and time. But then there's my son. Marco is 17, and somehow, in a world that feels faded, he remains vivid. He sees me, not just the woman behind the makeup, but the person beneath it. He's always ready with a helping hand, a soft word, or a knowing look. He carries groceries, makes tea, massages my shoulders when the day has worn me thin. I wonder sometimes if he sees through the mask I wear each day, the one I no longer bother to take off even at home. Last Tuesday dragged me under. My feet throbbed from the hours, and my arms were tired from easing tension from too many strangers. When I finally came through the front door, I was met with the scent of lemons and chamomile, my favorites. Marco had been in the kitchen again. "Sit down, Mom," he said, motioning to the set table. "I made lemon chicken and brewed your tea, just the way you like." His thoughtfulness hit me hard. "You didn't need to go to all that trouble." "I wanted to," he replied, and his voice carried something quiet and steady. We sat in the living room, plates balanced on our laps, the television murmuring aimlessly in the background. Our dinners had become a kind of shared sanctuary, easy, warm, unspoken comfort. His voice has grown deeper lately, and sometimes when he speaks, it stops me. He sounds less like the boy I raised, and more like someone I've only just begun to know. "Rough day?" he asked as he passed the bowl of rice. I chuckled. "Just the usual. People thinking a wax can be painless if I do it just right." He smiled, a flicker of mischief in his eyes. "You've always made magic happen, even when it hurts a little." His words stopped me cold. He was looking at me, not like a child, but with the soft focus of someone truly present. It made my breath catch. That night, I stood brushing my hair, wrapped in a robe. The mirror reflected a woman starting to age, soft creases forming gently around her eyes. I wasn't old. Not yet, but youth had begun to retreat at the edges. A gentle knock came at my door. "Come in," I said, assuming Marco wanted to talk about something for school or grab my charger again. But he lingered in the doorway. "Just wanted to say goodnight," he said softly. I turned and gave him a small smile. "Good night, sweetheart." He stepped into the room, stopping just in front of me. "You looked so tired earlier. Are you really okay?" "I am now," I whispered. He leaned down and kissed the top of my head. The gesture was simple, but something in the air shifted. It wasn't heavy, just still, full, like the moment was holding its breath. When he left, closing the door behind him, I stood there, brushing my hair, my thoughts spinning. The room felt warmer, and I didn't know why. It had been one of those endless days at the salon. I skipped lunch, survived on reheated coffee, and pushed through each appointment like clockwork. By 7, the last client was gone. I moved through my closing routine, folding towels, wiping counters, switching off lights, eager to go home. Then the door chime startled me. I turned, half expecting someone who'd forgotten a wallet or a stray delivery. But it was Marco. He stepped inside, a familiar silhouette now undeniably older, a bottle of wine in hand and a smile that tugged at something deep inside me. "Hey," I said, confused. "What are you doing here?" He raised the bottle slightly. "I figured you'd be wiped out. Thought you could use a little break." His tone was light, but his eyes said more. He wasn't posturing.
He was steady. Sure.
Not a child anymore. Not even close. A reluctant smile tugged at my lips as I shook my head. You didn't need to do all this. But I wanted to, he replied quickly, his voice steady, just like all the other times he'd said it before. He poured the wine into one of the clear tumblers from the break room and handed it to me with a careful ease. Then he gestured toward the old couch we used during lulls between appointments, the one nestled in the studio's quietest corner. Come sit, he said. Tonight's about you, not the job. Still wearing my salon uniform, a black wrap dress with faint traces of oils and rosewater, I hesitated. But something about the way he looked at me, so calm and open, made me move without thinking twice. I took the glass and walked over, curling up on the couch, my legs folding beside me. The light above us was soft and golden, diffused like twilight. Marco sat down near my feet, took a small sip of wine, then placed the glass aside. Lie back, he said gently. Let me do something for you this time. I blinked, uncertain. What are you doing? He tilted his head, a quiet grin forming. You take care of everyone else all day. Maybe someone should take care of you for once. Before I could respond, his hands reached for my feet. I tensed on instinct, years of guardedness, but his touch was careful, steady. His fingers moved with intention, pressing just enough to release the ache, not intensify it. You're on your feet more than anyone I know, he murmured. I let out a breath, slow and shaky. Some days, I honestly don't know how I keep going. His hands moved higher, easing tension from my ankles and calves with quiet precision. He never rushed, never said more than needed. The stillness around us wasn't heavy. It was comforting, like a warm bath or a soft blanket. When he reached my knees, he glanced up. Here, give me the glass, he said, taking it gently from my hand. Turn over. Let me work on your back. His voice was casual, but there was something beneath it. Something low and steady. I paused, then shifted, lying on my stomach and resting my cheek against the cushion. The scent of lavender still lingered faintly from the afternoon's last session. Marco began again, this time starting at the soles of my feet, moving in slow, seamless lines up the back of my legs. Every motion was thoughtful, respectful. There was no rush, no presumption, just the quiet presence of someone who knew exactly where I held my tension. His palms found my lower back, his thumbs moving in small, slow spirals. And something inside me began to unwind, not just from the massage but from the sheer experience of being noticed. When his hands moved to my shoulders and neck, he spoke again. You always say your scalp's the best part. I nodded, eyes closed now, fully given over to the moment. He shifted position behind me, his knees on the floor, and ran his fingers gently through my hair. His touch was so soft, it barely felt real, just the hush of fingers and breath, the sensation of being cared for with a kind of reverence I'd forgotten was possible. I exhaled, a sound that felt like it had been waiting years to escape. When his hands finally stilled, he didn't move away. Instead, he sat beside me once more, his hand settling lightly on my shoulder. You okay? He asked. I opened my eyes, looked up at him. I don't think I've ever felt more okay, I whispered. And I meant every word. The light outside had dimmed completely, leaving only thin golden traces sneaking through the slats in the blinds. I remained curled on the couch, my body warm and loose, when I heard the soft click as Marco pulled the blinds shut. One by one, the windows disappeared into shadow. I lifted my head slightly. He moved across the room quietly, his outline lit only by the weak streetlight beyond the glass.
He didn't speak.
He didn't have to. Then the last light was off. The low hum of the ceiling fixture faded into silence. The studio became a cocoon of stillness. Marco? I asked. My voice came out unsure, softer than I intended. He didn't reply. He simply walked back, sat beside me, and gently guided my head into his lap. His fingers returned to my scalp, tender and knowing, as if he were reading some silent need in me I hadn't dared speak aloud. Each pass of his hand grounded me deeper into the moment. I heard nothing but our breath.
His. Mine.
Quiet and slow, like waves brushing against the edge of something too deep to name. And as time slipped past unnoticed, I felt my heart settle into a rhythm I hadn't known it was missing. There was no salon, no uniform clinging to me, no clock ticking down the moments of obligation. Just the warmth of his lap beneath my cheek, his fingers moving gently through my hair, and the sense that I had stepped outside of time. It felt like floating between waking and dreaming, weightless, unbound by names or roles. In that stillness, I wasn't a mother. I wasn't tired or worn. I was simply a woman, quietly unraveling under a kind of care I hadn't realized I'd been aching for. His touch didn't demand anything. It offered comfort without question, presence without pressure. A connection so honest, it silenced the voices in my mind that whispered it was wrong to find solace here. He bent forward slightly, and I felt the soft release of his breath against my forehead.
He didn't speak.
He didn't need to. His nearness alone said more than words could ever manage. I stayed there, unmoving, cradled by something I didn't yet understand but couldn't resist. The silence between us wasn't heavy. It was sacred. A kind of peace I hadn't tasted in years. "You carry so much," he said at last, his voice low, barely above a whisper. "You deserve to feel what it's like to not hold it all." His words hit something inside me I'd long kept hidden. I couldn't respond. I could only feel. And in that stillness, what rose wasn't fear. It was something tender, something close to longing. He didn't rush anything, just kept his hand in my hair, slow and steady. My fingers curled lightly against the fabric at his leg, not to pull him closer, but to keep from drifting away entirely. There was no script for this. No label. Just a rhythm between two hearts that had, for a moment, aligned in stillness. And I didn't want it to end. The dark in the room deepened until it wrapped us in a gentle veil. His touch hadn't faltered, and I didn't know how long we'd been like that. Him, anchored in silence, me, melting slowly into it. Then, without a word, he shifted slightly. His hand stilled, palm warm against the side of my face. He leaned down, and I felt the soft press of his lips against my forehead. Light as a breath. Measured.
Real.
I didn't move. Another moment passed, and then I felt it again, this time at my cheek, close to the edge where memory meets sensation. It wasn't rushed or seeking. It was given. Deliberate. I stayed still, every part of me quiet and watching. Then came the last one on my lips, barely there. A touch, not a question. A whisper, not a declaration. It passed, and yet it echoed inside me. He didn't move far, didn't retreat. His thumb traced the outline of my jaw, his eyes watching not for reaction, but for truth. And I couldn't lie, not to him, not to myself. I hadn't recoiled. I hadn't spoken. But everything inside me surged forward in a wave of warmth and guilt, of something dangerously close to understanding. I wasn't confused. I was seen. And for the first time in far too long, I felt real. The silence returned, but it carried something different now, charged, undeniable. He didn't look away.
And I didn't speak.
I couldn't. My heart thudded, not with fear, but with the wild knowledge that something irreversible had just passed between us. No one shouted. No one touched in haste. But the room had shifted. I tried, the words sticking in my throat. He only said, "You don't have to." Was it wrong? Maybe. But it was also true. And sometimes, truth doesn't wear the face we expect. So I stayed, resting in the dark, still within his presence, listening to the unsteady rhythm of my thoughts catching up to my heart. The air around us wasn't light anymore. It had weight. It had gravity. It pulled us in, and neither of us let go. He moved again, shifting carefully. This time, his hands left my hair and settled on my shoulders, then slowly down my arms. He paused there, giving me space, a silent invitation to speak if I needed to stop if I chose to. But I didn't. I couldn't. My body was no longer braced against the world. It had surrendered, adrift in a place where thought dissolved and only feeling remained. He reached toward the cabinet by the couch, the one where I kept my essential oils. I heard the soft click of the cap opening, and the gentle aroma of lavender rose around us, like a familiar comfort. I turned over slowly, my heart fluttering like wings behind my ribs, and he looked at me. Not like a child looks at a parent. Not even like a son. He looked at me the way someone looks at someone they've truly noticed for the first time. "Is this okay?" he asked, voice low and certain, holding the small bottle in one hand. I nodded. He warmed the oil in his palms, the scent growing richer with each motion. Then, with a quiet reverence, he placed his hands along the top of my chest, just under my collarbone. His thumbs moved in slow, fluid circles near the base of my neck. My breath caught, not from discomfort, but from the sudden sense of being opened. No one had touched me there in years. Not with tenderness. Not with care. His hands moved down, tracing only the places where tension lived, those quiet corners of the body that store old aches. His fingers were steady, never searching, never unsure. Just present. Listening.
Giving.
My breath slowed, my eyes closing again. With each motion, I felt warmth rise in my skin, as though the oil carried light. He didn't rush. He wasn't taking, he was offering. His hands moved like he'd studied me from afar and knew the places that had been forgotten, even by myself. Time blurred. I couldn't say how long we stayed there, lost in the rhythm of quiet care. No mother. No son. Just two people suspended in a moment where everything was stripped down to its simplest form: touch, breath, stillness. Eventually, his movement stopped. He said nothing. He didn't need to. He cleaned his hands, then sat beside me again, watching, waiting, eyes soft, full of patience and something quieter still. I didn't meet his gaze. My chest was full, too full, with warmth, with confusion, with a softness I didn't expect, and fear, real fear, because a small voice inside me whispered that if I stayed there any longer, I might not want to leave. The next morning, I was awake before the sun rose. The world was hushed, caught in that strange, silvery space between night and day. Everything from the night before drifted around me like mist.
Not gone.
Not clear, but undeniably real. A cup of tea sat on the floor outside my bedroom door, steam curling upward like a quiet hello. He had left it for me, the way he used to leave drawings when he was small. Back then, it had been stick figures and stars. Now it was a warm mug and silence, heavy with meaning. I sat with it for a long time. When I finally left my room, Marco was in the kitchen, barefoot and half-dressed, reaching into the cabinet. The sight was so normal, so everyday it hurt. Because we weren't. He heard my steps and turned. "Morning," he said carefully, his voice cautious but kind. "Morning," I replied, my throat catching around the word. We didn't speak of the night. We didn't need to. It was there in the pause before every sentence, in the way we glanced but didn't linger, in the invisible thread now tied between us, impossible to untangle. That afternoon, I was at the studio again, setting up fresh linens, wiping counters, returning to the comfort of routine. That's when I saw him in the doorway. He didn't step in right away. Just stood there, his hand brushing nervously through his hair. "Can I ask you something?" he said at last. I nodded, feeling my heart brace. He came inside, his steps quieter than usual. His cheeks were a little pink, but his expression held nothing playful. "I know this might sound strange, but I trust you." I waited. "I need a wax," he said after a beat. "Down there. And I don't want anyone else doing it." My breath caught, not because of the words themselves, but because of what they meant. He wasn't trying to provoke. He wasn't testing boundaries. He was asking in the way someone asks when they know they'll be safe. Still, I paused. The weight wasn't in the request. It was in the moment between us, heavy with all the things we weren't saying, all the things we now felt. I folded the towel in my hands slowly and turned to look at him. "Are you certain?" I asked, keeping my voice steady, measured, just as I would with any client. He nodded once, his gaze steady.
Yeah.
I trust you. That word, trust. It landed softly, but echoed through me like a bell. I drew a breath and motioned gently toward the back room. All right then, we'll do this the right way. No more words passed between us as I prepared everything, heating the wax, laying out clean linens, adjusting the lighting just so. The space around us was quiet, but not empty. It pulsed with something we both felt but didn't name. A stillness that vibrated underneath, like a string pulled too tight, but not snapped. He undressed just enough for what was needed, moving with a quiet composure that made my heart thump against my ribs. He lay down on the table, eyes fixed on the ceiling, hands resting lightly at his sides. My hands worked the way they always did, confident, gentle, practiced. I had done this hundreds of times before, but never under these circumstances. Never for someone whose heartbeat I once listened to through a monitor, someone who had once curled up beside me in sleep like he was made of trust itself. And still, it wasn't just the physicality of the moment that stirred me, it was the depth of what lingered between us. The silence, the awareness, the truth that something had long since shifted, and neither of us could pretend we hadn't noticed. When the final strip was placed and removed, I stepped back, peeling off my gloves with care. I draped a clean towel over him, covering the space where ritual ended and vulnerability remained. It's done, I said softly. He turned his head, meeting my gaze, not with shame or awkwardness, but with calm, with presence. Thanks, he murmured, for keeping it steady. I gave a small nod, my voice almost lost to my own breath. We've never done things the easy way, Marco. No, he said, a faint smile pulling at the corner of his mouth. But it's always been honest. And that, more than anything, was what caught in my chest. Because in all the years of pretending, performing, and hiding from myself, I couldn't remember the last time something felt so unflinchingly true.